This is Ron Peters.
I'm Sam Long.
And I'm John Nugent.
Welcome to the After Class Podcast.
Because the best conversations happen
After class.
Thanks for joining us. Another episode of the After Class Podcast. We're glad to have you along. We teased last week about the all-campus event Armageddon that was going to be taking place. And it did take place, and we got through it. John and I both survived the weekend, though John barely.
See, I wasn't here, so these comments I can laugh at them, but I'm laughing along because I don't have context.
So you probably think, he went down to the back. That's what may have hurt him. That was not actually what happened. Should I tell the story, or John, should you?
Maybe I should tell.
Probably, since it happened to you.
I was cutting a giant 4x8 sheet of cardboard as a part of our boat building. So we build cardboard boats out of 4x8 sheets of cardboard, and then we pilot them with students, and they float down the Grand River, and whoever gets there first with their boat still intact wins. And I was assigned the task of cutting triangle portions out of different parts of the boat. And the specific angle I had to cut with a box cutter made it impossible to get out of the way of the knife. And so you just have to be really slow and make sure you don't, for instance, slice yourself in the gut.
Right.
And on my very last cut, it's a timed competition. I was maybe rushing, maybe not being as careful as someone with the utility knife should be. And I now have 7 stitches in my stomach.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, wow.
I thought it was like a paper cut dealio. I just looked down. It's like, ooh, it's like a bee sting or something like that. It's like, ow, that kind of stung. And I lifted up my shirt, and it started erupting like a volcano, like from right above where the appendix is.
Oh, my gosh.
And I just put my hand on it, applied pressure, and just walked away and said, hey, you guys are going to have to finish this without me. I got to go tend to this. And then I went to an emergency urgent care center, and they stitched me up.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's a little startling. And I know what that feels like, because I did that once where I cut myself like on a piece of glass. And when you see a copious amount of blood all at once, it's a little startling, to say the least.
Yeah. But I've cut myself so many times. I mean, I work with my hands a lot, do a lot of construction building, and and you do it so often, you're familiar with it, you get comfortable with it, you're not always as careful. And a lot of people say, you never cut toward yourself. Like, that's the easy kind of rebuttal.
Right, yeah.
But, when you're cutting what I had to cut in the there's no way not to stand there. But still, I obviously wasn't careful enough and paid the price.
Yeah, well,
I'm glad it was me and not a student.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah, exactly.
See?
I would say the good news is your team's red, so it just blended right in with the boat.
It's true. I cleaned the shirt. I have a red shirt, and you can't even tell there was a stain there. My shorts that were tan.
On the other hand.
There's quite a bit of blood on them.
Well, wait a minute. You were able to clean the shirt? Like, you didn't cut through the shirt then?
Oh, he cut
There's
through
a
the
hole.
shirt.
There's a hole.
Okay.
It'll be my permanent Armageddon shirt. As long as I'm cracking, I'll be wearing that shirt.
Well, yeah, because now it's like a badge of honor.
Yeah, it's a story to tell. But, I mean, the good news is my team won that event. The bad news for me and the good news for Sam is that his team won the competition.
Correct.
For the 3rd year in a row.
Yes. Hydra won for 3 years in a row.
Well done.
I've got a great team. I'm graduating a few that we're going to sorely miss, but, just have a good, solid all-around team. You got people who are quick and smart with the mind games and enough athleticism. We are by no means the most athletic team. But enough to, stay in competitions. But they're great. I just usually sit back and let them cook, as the kids say.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're not really, even though we're part of these teams, we're not the captains. It's student leaders.
Correct.
We're just we help thermostats set the right. When they start getting too competitive in ways that are sore, you help direct them. And when they're doing stupid things, you say, no, don't think about what you're doing. And when they're putting the same person in every time, you're like, no, spread it around. So... But I'm really proud of our team. And we did have our teams were neck and neck. It was like a 1-point difference at the end. And you're right, your team definitely won better in the non-athletic ones, and my team definitely did well in the athletic ones. And, it was a close competition. Team Meg just really needs more enforcements next year. They just didn't have enough faculty leadership as well as student participation. So... each year, but it was a blast. I always enjoy it.
Was a really good time. Every year I kind of dread it because this is what I'm doing all weekend, and then after it's like, that was fun. I'm exhausted, but that was fun. Yeah.
Well, every year I didn't do it this year, but every year I try to come out and cheer the teams on. So I always try to make sure I wear one article of clothing that's black, one that's red, and one that's blue. so that people can't even assume that they know which
Switzerland.
way.
Yep.
Yeah. I embrace the neutrality. I try to cheer everybody on equally. Yeah.
I don't.
That's fine. I would much rather be on the sideline cheering on than be a part of a team. It's just my personality. It's who I am. So
Our other piece of news is we received a gift from listeners.
yeah.
Which we readily accept.
Yes, love it. I was glad somebody else opened it because, when you get something in the mail, you never know what's going to blow up in your face. So
He's like, Sam, here you go. Why don't you open it? Like, oh, all right.
yeah. And so, no, it's great. It was a bag of coffee from the Becks, thanking us for the podcast. And so we're really grateful to you. Want to acknowledge you on the air that you sent us this coffee. Now, so John and I were trying to talk about when we can make the coffee. Sam is not a coffee guy, so it's not going to be much of a gift for him. But John and I have to figure out a time where we can make this coffee together and enjoy it, and then maybe give some feedback on our take on this gift.
Yeah. So thank you, Benjamin and family.
Yeah.
And your bean roasting business.
Yeah. Hope it goes well for you. I hope it's a successful endeavor.
Is there they have a name?
I don't know. Hey, people who give us gifts, we'll say your name on the air.
Sure.
Promote
That's
your
right.
work.
Looks like A Beck Creations.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. And they sent the Beck Classic Roast, whatever that is. So there you go. I will say I'm gonna read what it says on the label.
Okay,
I think
sure,
it's hilarious. For free for some awesome professors and Sam Long. Parentheses. Sorry, we never had you as a prof. Enjoy. Well, just for that, I'm not going to drink it. Otherwise, I was definitely drinking the coffee.
Right.
Even though
the
you
guy who never
despise
drinks
coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things that taste like mud, dirt, whatever you want to call it.
Dirty bean water is what it tastes like, and that's fine. People do their thing.
I think dirty bean water is a good description, and it's fantastic.
Okay, well,
So.
that's fine. Tea is dirty leaf water.
I like to think of it as cherry pit juice
Oh, cherry pit juice.
because I don't like beans. I do like cherries. So reframing.
There you go.
All right, back to our study.
Yes,
So we started. We started last week, right? We interrupted our recordings to do the special episode in Charlie Kirk, but that didn't go between the two episodes.
It did. So
It
we had
did.
an introduction, Charlie, first couple verses of chapter 1, and now we're picking it up again.
Okay. All right.
So this is our third episode in Peter.
Yeah. All right. So by our notes, we've gotten through verse 7 of chapter 1,
Right.
and it's weird to just start at verse 8. So Sam's gonna read 3 through 9, but we're gonna focus our comments on 8 and 9 since we didn't get to talk about them last time, and then we'll keep going from there.
Yeah, we're going to put into practice what we teach students about context and, reading things together. Yeah.
It is important. I agree.
Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. By his great mercy, he has given us a new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, kept in heaven for you, who are being protected by the power of God through faith for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you rejoice, even if now for a little while you have had to suffer various trials, so that the genuineness of your faith, being more precious than gold, that though perishable is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. Although you have not seen him, you love him, and even though you do not see him now, you believe in him, and rejoice with an indescribable and glorious joy, for you are receiving the outcome of your faith, the salvation of your souls.
One of the things that I've liked about verse 8, and we talked about this before we hit record, is that in verse 8, it sounds very much like what you see in John's gospel. Towards the end of the gospel, chapter 20, when Thomas when Thomas refuses to believe Jesus, he's like, I won't believe it unless I can see him. And then Jesus appears and he's like, oh my gosh.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, I believe now. And Jesus says, do you believe because you've seen? Says, how much more blessed are those who have not seen and yet they believe. And that really strong emphasis there, that those who have never seen Jesus but believe, they really occupy this special place. Peter really captures that as well. Not seeing, you love him, and though you don't see him, you believe. And so those things I think are really important. And that's where, even after all this time, nearly 2,000 years, we find ourselves in the exact same place. I've never seen Jesus. Everything that I believe about Jesus has been mediated to us through, the witnesses who actually saw him in their life. And I have made the choice to accept their testimony. And so I think that Peter is saying, yeah, I was there. Of course I believe it. But you guys are in such a better place because you've believed what we have told you, and God sees that and says, I am so happy to see your belief. And that belief is continuing even in the face of suffering. If you have to suffer for a little while, that doesn't discourage you. Your faith is so powerful that it lives in the shadow, or suffering lives in the shadow of your faith. And so I think that's a great statement for Peter to use to encourage them.
Yeah, it's a great verse to be a part of, a kind of a well-rounded view of faith. What is faith? What's the nature of faith? And faith for everyone, there are different sets of barriers between us and faith. And for the earliest believers, they saw Jesus, they were with him, but it took faith to believe that lowly servant Jesus was the Messiah of Israel, despite the different, mixed and confused views of what the Messiah would do. But it's a different thing to be on the other side of his death and ascension, to say, I believe him, though I never saw him. Although in some ways it might be easier because, what we hear about him is he is resurrected and ascended to the Father. So that's almost like an advantage. Like the people who believed him in his lifetime had to believe, despite his servant posture, that he was the one.
Good point.
But we get to believe in light of the testimony about the resurrection and the ascension. So we believe in a victorious Savior. It's hard to say like one is better than the other, but it's something that's special about our faith is that it is, like Hebrews says, it's you believe, things that are not yet having come to pass, that you haven't seen with your eyes, that are still yet to come. And it's the challenge of our time is that, it's been 2,000 years and we still haven't seen him.
Yeah, that's a long time. Well, and you brought up a really good point there, that during his lifetime, Jesus just did not live up to the popular expectations of the Messiah. And at times he seemed to deliberately, do things to challenge that and almost undermine people's faith if their faith was based on these popular expectations. And so for anybody to stick with Jesus, even while he was alive, actually was a real significant step for them. That's like, you're not doing the things we expected, but we certainly can't deny what we see with our own eyes and hear with our ears. So yeah, you don't want to diminish the faith that they had, because even that required them to reorient themselves to what they had been taught their entire lives.
Yeah, what I find interesting is it seems like modern day, you have very polarized view of faith. On the one hand, it's like, I need to have all of the evidences laid out before me in order to have faith. And the other, you have like, it's blind faith. Why don't you just believe without having any evidence? And I don't think that's what Peter's saying. I mean, there are evidences, there are expectations, there are witnesses to the event. It's not blind, but at the same time, he's gone in the sense of he's ascended. And so we can't go point to him and say, see, I told you so. And so it's this interesting kind of, like you said, John, this in-between where the waiting, and there are plenty of good reasons to believe, but it's not, that's why it's called faith. It's not like 100% established. And so I appreciate what he's saying, that there's a level of, you can't see it all. You're not going to have it all, but you still believe. And you should believe because there are valid reasons to believe.
Yeah. Well, even at Ascension, like, so many people were expecting Jesus, or expecting the Messiah to take up David's throne.
Mm-hmm.
You're expecting this very political Messiah. For him to ascend, back to the Father, it's like, that's just like the last piece where it's like, you're not doing what we thought. And I'm sure that was a real challenge, especially as these Israelites are trying to preach to their brothers and sisters a very radically different Messiah. And that just points to how powerful that faith must be.
Yeah. And I think the second part of this verse is particularly necessary to remind ourselves of in our time. We believe in him and rejoice with an indescribable and glorious joy. Like, belief in Jesus whom we don't see results in rejoicing with indescribable and glorious joy. Like, that should be the character. Like, if Peter were to look into our lives, into our congregations, be a part of our gatherings, right, as believers, when we gather around Jesus, would he see us rejoicing with indescribable and glorious joy? Right? That to me is a little bit convicting, right? Like, because I think we can allow some of the troubles of the world, the sufferings, the pain, the monotony of our life rhythms, or our struggles even as a faith community, to rob us of our joy, or like things happening in politics or in the world or among our neighbors, right, to rob us of our joy. but our faith in Christ, that he is ascended on high, that our hope is there with him, and no one can touch that. It's safe from all the troubles of this world, resulted in this congregation, at least these dispersed congregations, right, in this joy that's indescribable. Like, it makes no sense that these people are happy when everyone else is sad, or when everyone else is frustrated, or everyone else is angry. And that's a challenge for us to that our faith would manifest itself in the same way. And if it doesn't manifest itself in the same way, is it the same faith, or are we allowing other things, to stifle that faith?
Well, I think that for many people, they're just talking about Jesus, and obviously that's great. I mean, this is the Son of God. This is the one who was crucified and rose from the dead. And so focusing on Jesus is a great thing, but I also think that it can miss part of the picture, because what they're rejoicing in isn't that Jesus is great, our God is bigger than your God, even though he is, but it's the vision of the kingdom that Jesus gave us, that he taught us about this idea of the kingdom. And so when people accept Jesus, they're not just accepting him, the person, but they're accepting that vision that he cast for us. And that is an overwhelming vision, that they're overwhelmed by the vision of the kingdom. That on the one hand, we're trying to live out as these small communities in the midst of larger communities that don't buy it, but also with the vision of the future, the now and not yet. And so when you begin to embrace the vision that Jesus cast for us and see the connection to that, it's like, wow, on the one hand, we're part of something great. Go ahead and try to hurt us. Doesn't matter, because you can't take away the joy we have. And you certainly can't take away the future that we're looking for, which is part of what I think Peter is focusing on here, that no matter what they do, they can't take that away. And when you're overwhelmed by the beauty of that vision, that I think is what Peter's is what he's talking about there.
Yeah. And I was not just the future, but I think verse 9 points us to the present experience, right? For you are receiving the outcome of your faith.
Okay, good point, yeah.
The salvation of your soul. So they are already experiencing salvation in this life. And this is what Jesus said, right? Like, those who come to him will experience, those who give up homes and families and stuff, possessions in this life, will receive hundredfold in this life. And in the age to come, eternal life. So there is this present down payment inheritance that these communities are experiencing together, despite persecution, that is a foretaste of that full inheritance to come.
Yeah, that's the now and not yet. We get benefits now, and the future is, all of it makes it so worthwhile. I agree.
And I think we do our people a disservice when we, as churches, only focus on the not yet.
Yeah.
Right? Like the reason you can rejoice, the reason you have all these things is because you are currently receiving the outcome of your faith. So there should be things that are changing for the positive in your life right now. Now, this isn't like a health and wealth gospel. This isn't like I accept Jesus and everything's better. But like something should be changing in the positive. Yes, you're still living in a fallen world, and yes, there are consequences of sin all around you. But faith does something, at least it should, in your life here, now, right now. And I don't know that we talk about that enough.
Well, I think we should. It's about building these communities that are experiencing the first fruits of the kingdom. And I think it's why people are able to push back. I was like kind of using the story about, the couple in the first century who become Christians, and they're working in this little shop where they make clay pots. And at first they come there and they're idolaters and they have all the symbols of idolatry in their shop. But when they become Christians, they give all that up. And they begin to pull back from going to the temples and doing all these other things. And what happens is their neighbors notice. And they're like, all right, you don't want to be a part of us? We won't be a part of you. We're not going to do business in your shop. We're not going to. And mom and dad are like, how are we going to feed ourselves and our kids when people won't come into our shop anymore? And if it's just like, we're going to keep our focus on Jesus, that's certainly a part of it, but focus on Jesus should mean that your community is going to say, if the world pulls back, we won't.
Yeah, I have a great and timely example of this. Just what does this look like 21st century on the ground?
Yeah.
We had a woman in our church who vehicle died, and it's gone, and she has no money at this moment because of the job situation that she's in, and there's another family in our church who recently received a big bonus at work, and they're giving a chunk of that bonus to her to at least help her start to get a new car. And others in the church, their gatherings and their tithes and offerings are going to supplement and combine with that bonus so that this sister in Christ can have a functioning vehicle, which she depends upon for her livelihood. And she was just testifying last night. She's like, if I never moved up to Lansing, if I wasn't part of this church, I would be in despair in situations like this. And she's like, I've not had to worry. I never worried for a second because I knew God would take care of me, and he always takes care of his people. And I've seen other people be provided for in their time of need, and I just knew that God was going to provide for me, and this is how he did it.
Yep.
And so that's, again, she's going through something that's, life upending because of the financial situation, that because of the salvation she's receiving, because of the inheritance that's already begun, mothers, sisters, houses, cars, right?
Right, exactly.
In the kingdom, there's plenty to go around for that. And the challenge is ordering our lives so that we know when people have needs and we're positioned to mobilize our resources to meet those needs. And that's the challenge for churches, to find ways to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I think leads into the final question of verse 9, which is the translation of the word souls. Because I think when most people see the outcome of your faith, the salvation of your soul, that's this idea of like, yes, my body will die, but my soul will go to be with heaven and with Jesus, right? And so what do you think about the translation of souls?
Well, on the one hand, it's literal. It's the word psyche in Greek. Psychon, it's a genitive plural, but it's the word that translates soul. So if you're going to be literal in the translation, sure, that it works. But soul didn't always mean the same thing to them. Like, we kind of treat soul almost the same as spirit, almost as if the two words are interchangeable. And so the soul is the non-corporeal part of your body that goes on even after your body dies. But for the Greeks, soul had more to do with that thing that makes you alive, a living person. You could argue that animals had souls, not in the sense of an eternal spirit, but it's that breath of life, that thing that makes you alive. I guess it's comparable to what nefesh in Hebrew.
Yep.
Yeah.
So animating life force kind of.
And so it's not the salvation of your
material self.
Yeah. But the reality of it's the salvation of what makes you a living person. And so salvation is part of that now and not yet. That your soul is active right now in animating you, and you're experiencing that right now. So it's, yes, soul, but think about soul in a first century kind of Greco-Roman, Hebrew too.
Christian.
Christian way.
Early Christian way.
Yeah, I got to dial that back. So don't just take it as your spirit goes to heaven someday, but rather your life is being saved.
Yeah, in our translation, the NRSV just had a little note where it says, or lives. I mean, so when you think soul, think less your non-bodily self. Think what makes you alive, your life. It's your life that's being saved, and you're experiencing that even now.
Yeah, there are just certain words like psyche, nefesh, that animating life force is a good idea, tough to translate it that way every time, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so that we have these shorthands that are like, if you don't know, you don't know. And then all of a sudden you get all sorts of other connotations that are just not quite, we think, what the author was getting at.
Yeah, the salvation of your animating life force.
Right. It just doesn't roll off the tongue like so.
It really doesn't. And somebody's going to do something weird with it.
Yeah.
If you're going to translate it that way, something freaky is going to come out of it.
All right, ready to move on? Because he's not done with this thought.
Right. My turn?
Why not?
Starting in verse 10 through 12, right?
Sure.
All right. Concerning this salvation, the prophets who prophesied of the grace that was to be yours made careful search and inquiry, inquiring about the person or the time that the Spirit of Christ within them indicated, when it testified in advance to the sufferings destined for Christ and the subsequent glory. It was revealed to them that they were serving not themselves, but you, in regard to the things that have now been announced to you through those who brought you good news by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, things into which angels long to look. That's almost hard to read. I'm reading through it going, yeah, this translation is a little bit challenging. And like this whole, like all of chapter 1 here, my second year Greek students, this is always towards the end of second year Greek, and so we end up translating it through. I've read it in Greek dozens of times because it's part of the class, and so there was a part of me going, my mind was going back to the Greek and going, this is maybe not how I would have worded it. Again, it's not a bad translation. It just doesn't roll off the tongue as easily. Kind of stumbling through it there.
It's one of my favorite parts of the book, though. And because I think it talks about this is concerning this salvation, the salvation that these believers are already experiencing amid suffering, despite suffering. This is the salvation that prophets long ago spoke about, that even heavenly angels, are, waiting for. And like, it's the culmination of world history and salvation history. Like, and that's just huge. Like what the believers were experiencing was just not some, hey, what cool thing is happening now in the first century? It's like, no, this thing that's happening in their lives is the salvation that all of world history, the wisest seers of old and even angelic beings anticipated. This is the very thing that believers are experiencing. So it's just the highest praise for the quality of salvation life that we have received in Jesus and are already getting to experience.
Yeah. It makes me think of it's almost like the big locker room speech, the coach coming in there and just riling up the troops. And I think that there's some merit to that analogy, because I think Peter is starting out this letter just really excited, and he wants his audience to be really excited. And I don't think he doubts their excitement, but he's reminding them of things that they already knew. And he's like, this is a big deal. This thing that we're experiencing right now, to your point, John, I think it's a great point. Man, the people who prophesied about it didn't get to see its fulfillment. And then they went back and looked at it again, like, what was I talking about as I wrote this stuff down? Angels are like, this is amazing, and we're not even sure that we get the full picture of it. But now we get to experience it. This is Dan Campbell in the Lions locker room just cheering on his boys. Sorry, people, I'm a Lions fan. That was just the one I went to.
It's the correct analogy.
Yeah, it is just such an exciting moment, and Peter wants his audience to appreciate it in all of its glory.
So, depending on how you read that section, it almost is like the prophets had in mind this exact moment when they were prophesying. Do you think that's a valid interpretation, that when they were writing, they had in mind this moment that Peter is referencing, that would be between 500 and 700 years later, after the prophet was long dead?
I think to a degree, it speaks to the kinds of debates that were happening before Jesus came, during his lifetime, after he came, because not everybody even agreed on what the Messiah was going to look like. There were debates within Israel, within Judaism, about the nature of the Messiah. And they were all going back to the same text, but different groups would have different understandings of what those texts looked like. And so what he's saying is, yeah, there were debates. And he might have even said, we all got it wrong. Like when Jesus finally did appear and we came to understand the nature of the Messiahship, we all looked around and said, boy, I guess we all got it wrong to one degree or another. And they had to, again, transform their expectations to align with what God was actually doing among them. So I think part of it is just acknowledging of the fact that, yep, we did the best we could with what we had, but God always likes to surprise us, and he always likes to show us that no matter how well you think you've got it together, I can kind of throw some curves at you.
Yeah, I'm comfortable saying unqualified yes. Like the prophets anticipated a time when Israel would be a blessing to the nations, when the old covenant would be renewed and made new, like a new covenant where the Spirit would be among the people, when a new heavens and new earth where the blind would see, right, and the deaf would hear, where God's covenant with his people would be restored and his purpose for them would be renewed. I think when the prophets are talking like that and anticipating a future day when God will accomplish his original purposes for Abraham's descendants, I think Peter's comfortable saying, yep, now's the time.
I agree with that. I'm not sure that's how it's often framed when I hear it. It's framed a little bit differently, like they looked forward to 500 years from now, and fortune telling framing of it.
Right, yeah.
And so that's too often how I hear it talked about in like church settings, but that's not the same thing as what you're saying, or I think what Peter's saying. Yes, they're looking forward to a time. They don't know when that time's going to be. For all we knew, they thought it was going to be 50 years from then,
Right. Yep.
not 500 years from then. And so if I'd like to be careful of how we frame what the prophets were doing, what they were envisioning, and what Peter's like, how he's applying those visions. That's all. Just a little clarification for me and maybe some listeners.
Yeah. Yeah. And not to smash everything that they were anticipating into this time
Right.
frame. Like they anticipated some things that were filled a long time ago. Right.
Yeah.
The destruction of the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, destruction of Greece. Right? These are all anticipated in the prophets, but there are other passages that point in the direction of the thing Jesus fulfilled.
Yep.
Yep.
I think you're up, John.
Okay, so
If you want.
I'm going to start with verse 13. This is a therefore. So what do we do in response, right? We're beginning to experience this salvation of our souls, this imperishable inheritance kept in heaven for us, things that, everyone in world history up to this point was hoping for, and we're getting to experience. Now what? So verse 13, therefore, prepare your minds for action. It's very interesting. Discipline yourselves. Set all your hope on the grace that Jesus Christ will bring you when he is revealed. Like obedient children, do not be conformed to the desires that you formerly had in ignorance. Instead, as he who called you is holy, be holy yourselves in all of your conduct. For it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. The section is bigger, but I thought I'd stop there.
No, that's
Yeah.
fine.
It's loaded.
Oh, right, and it's easier if we can break it down into two smaller chunks.
Let's start with the literal translation. I wish they would have gone. Therefore, gird the loins of your mind.
Right, yeah,
is what
gird
it
up-
says.
gird up
which
the loins of your
so
mind.
great.
Well, and it's a great translation moment because you could translate it literally, and then people are like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. What are the loins of your mind?
Right? Yeah, and it's an image that back then it was just very common. This is the way it is. We use euphemisms all over the place when we speak, and we don't even think about it. I always want to joke with people. Are like, do skyscrapers really scrape the sky? I mean, come on, what's going on there? Girding up the loins of your mind. It's an image from the ancient world of being prepared. Get ready, get your mind ready for what's going to happen, and just then be ready to act.
Can we pause and talk about literally what girding the loins would have meant?
100% we can.
Yep.
Nothing would make me happier, John.
Why don't you do that?
Thank you. So it's used at various times, but most well known is in the Exodus from Egypt, where they say, gird your loins. And what that means is they wore long, dressy type roby things. And so if you've ever tried to run in a dress, I don't know if you guys ever have.
Never.
Didn't spend much time wearing them.
Well, let me just tell you, it's tough. I don't know.
All those times you've worn a dress.
Well, our
right?
doctoral robes.
Yeah, I
Our
can't-
gowns.
Okay, yeah,
Yep.
there you go.
So instead of having the full length dress type thing, you fold it up and so that it wraps around your crotch area. That's what it means to gird up your loins. Now, instead of a dress, you got like spandex on and you're ready to go. Right? And so that's
Freeze
what
up
they
your
do.
legs.
Pardon?
Freeze up your legs
Correct.
to move.
To freeze up movement. And so that's how they would use it. And it came to be like you said, get ready, because at any moment you're gonna have free movement. You're gonna have time to gird them then, right? You're not gonna be folding all your clothing when the attack's coming. You gotta be ready to go. And so they girded up their loins to get ready for action. I think maybe a modern comparison would be like, get your jock strap on, because you're getting ready for the
Right,
game.
yeah.
Like the game's about to start. You can't
Yep.
be fiddling with that later.
Right. Well, and I think all the ladies in the audience probably understand it more intuitively, like depending on like how long and how narrow the dress is or skirt or whatever. Like you can't take long steps. And so you got to get it out of the way if your job is to run, towards something and be prepared. And so maybe they're kind of laughing at us. What if you wore what we wore, you'd know all about this. But in the ancient world, a lot of clothing had that kind of design to it, whether you were a man or a woman.
What I think is very necessary of this verse to be here at this point is because he's just talked about a faith of believing things you don't see. And you could deduce from that Christianity is just put your mind on a holiday, right? And just act from your gut or your feeling, or, what I'm saying? Like suspend all mental activity. Some people could read that that's what faith is all about. But he's saying that we have this faith in that we've received through witnesses because we have not met Jesus yet. We still love him. And the proper response to that faith is to take seriously what's in our head and how we mentally think about things. Right? Prepare our minds so that we may act appropriately. And so the faith is not the suspension of cerebral activity, right? It's directing it in the right direction based on the foundation of faith. There's still much mental work to be done.
Well, I think that part of that is we, on the one hand, we believe that God has spoken to us, and we trust that message. And that message is a transformational message. At the sort of foundation level, it's about Jesus, but it's still about Jesus teaching us to live radically new lives where we no longer conform to the pattern of this world, be transformed, as Paul says in Romans. And so what he's doing is he's really echoing that to say, you've learned a new way. It's this kingdom model that you guys are trying to live out. And yes, it's going to put you at odds with the world, and that's kind of why you need discipline, because the world is not going to be on board with it. But your faith isn't just believing that Jesus is the Son of God. That's where it begins. But it spills out into every area of your life. And that's going to mean you have to set your mind for action. You got to be ready to act on what Jesus has taught us and to be disciplined in your execution of those instructions.
And in particular, that discipline that is the girding of the loins of our mind is described in terms of setting. We have to exercise great discipline to set our hope on the grace of Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. And that fulfillment. Because our minds can, if we're not disciplined, they can wander to be obsessed with the problem you're facing now, the crisis that everyone else in the world is talking about, the loss, right? The things that happen that seem to make Christians look good or bad, right? Like, we can get distracted and we can focus our minds on things that are not ultimate. And he's like, hey, because of this great salvation, you have to focus, and you have to focus on the right thing. You can't be so easily distracted. Keep your eyes on the prize, and that prize is Jesus. And if you're not disciplined, some other thing is going to consume your thought life.
Agree.
I'm just going to say, before every test from now on, I'm going to say, gird the loins of your minds. That's what I'm going to say. 'Cause I think
We'll put it on the slide.
get ready to
our
go.
Slides. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you're right. That it's still, you can have all the faith in the world, but you still got to do something with the faith, first of all. And you got to be prepared for the fact that faith doesn't eliminate difficulty. And so, you got to be ready, you got to be disciplined or sober-minded, whatever it is, so that you can set your hope. Because if your hope's not set in what's to come and the grace that Christ has given you, then your faith will falter and fail. And so you're right, it's not just as long as emotionally I feel it. Like, no, emotions come and go, and it'll go quickly when difficult times come.
Yeah. And then the next verse, I like the way it's phrased. Like obedient children, do not be conformed to the desires that you formerly had in ignorance. And it was Miroslav Volf who has a great article on this book called Soft Difference. I may have referenced it before, but he's the one who kind of helped me see the significance of this passage. This book is about Christians being exiles, and it's very easy to say us versus them. And his article is called Soft Difference because he's trying to say this. Peter's not framing it as us versus them. At least in this verse, it's us versus our former selves. We're not better than them. We're not different from them in the sense that they're of a totally different cloth. They are what we were. We were exactly ignorant, exactly placing our desires in the wrong spots, exactly setting our minds on the wrong things, people without hope. And now through Jesus, we are something new. And so it's not us versus them bad people. Them bad people are like our former selves. And so that should give us a kind of compassion on others who are where we were. That the people that we feel in exile around are not an antithesis other to be in a constant state of combating, but we can totally relate to them because we were there.
Yeah. And this is where the image of death and resurrection is so important, because we died to that old self. We acknowledge that used to be me, but I died to that. Baptism symbolizes that. You're saying, I am not going to be that person anymore. And so I've been transformed by Jesus and by the message of the gospel. And so don't go backward. don't go back to being that person. It's an option. You could become that person again. But he's encouraging them, don't go backward, but stick with what you have committed to. This transformation, be a grown up. Don't go back to being the kids you were before.
For what you're saying, John, is interesting to think about, because on the one hand, they are very indebted to like this apocalyptic worldview mindset that is us and them, right? You're either all in or you're not. You're either holy as God is holy or you're not. But he's nuancing it to say, yes, but that's not exactly the whole picture, because yes, there's this in between. There's this you were there, now you're not there, but you're not fully holy yet either. Right? You're not. There's still things in your life you need to fix and get rid of, and that you are falling prey to, and so like it's for him, it's a movement to that. Sure, he's setting a high standard, but the expectation that I have faith and now I'm no longer even close to that anymore is just not true, and that's not. I think that's most people's experience as well, and so I appreciate his. His fisherman nuance of just the nuance. Just, like there's more to the story than just like us and them, as you say, and that's vital, because it's important for Christians to not just now I'm no longer associated with those people. Literally a week ago, you were those people,
right? Exactly.
Right.
But at the same time, you aren't. There's a new life. There's a new creation, and so it's balancing between those two polar opposites. It seems like.
Yeah, and this is going to have significance for the rest of the book. He's going to get into how specific believers relate to specific unbelievers around them. And it's not going to be one of we're better than them. It's not one of we try to replace them because we're better than them. It's a very nuanced way of relating to unbelievers who are in our lives in various capacities that it is gentle. It is person forward, person centered. It's recognizing the other as someone still very much made in the image of God and the object of his desire that they too be saved. And so how we respond to the unbelievers around us that make us feel in exile, that maybe are part of our being persecuted and going through these trials, that they're not a nemesis to position ourselves against. And so, yeah, we'll see where this goes later on in the book. But it does end with this doubling down on being holy in all our conduct, and citing Torah, for it is written, "You shall be holy, for I am holy." What's being quoted here, Sam, and why is it? What does it kind of mean? What did it mean for Israel, and what does it mean for the church?
So this is Leviticus, right out of Leviticus, and the book of Leviticus is intended to create a people that were distinct among the nations. And the goal for that was to allow that distinctiveness to shape them, and then ideally shape the world as a result. It wasn't just hide away from the rest of the world and be just different people. It was difference for a purpose, which was transformation and restoration, all those things. And so I think hearkening back, he's not saying follow Leviticus, but he's saying you need to be a people that are unique and different and set apart to God, as opposed to set apart to the things of the world.
Yeah, it's always been striking to me throughout First Peter, especially in these early chapters, how much Peter goes back to Israel imagery and he uses that to define them. He's in no way has he ever rejected Israel's history, but has said that history is now our history, that this used to apply to just the descendants of Abraham, but you Gentiles who have been adopted into the family and who are now part of this kingdom movement, this applies to you just as much as to them. And so we're going to see other instances of this as we're reading through these early passages. But so often Peter goes back to that. And it makes it very clear, just because you're a Gentile doesn't mean that this doesn't apply to you in some way. I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. And the language of being holy in all our conduct kind of rounds off the whole picture, right? So we have this faith that is the foundation of our salvation. If we didn't believe what the prophets and the angels were looking toward, that Jesus is the fulfillment of, we wouldn't have been reborn, right? And this results in a different mind, right? A different mindset, a different way of thinking, of disciplining our minds. And then it plays out in conduct, what we do with our bodies. So in what and would you say, the language of conduct is moving more toward the bodily, like roping in the whole life in that way?
Sure. Because you read Leviticus, not a lot of feelings. It's stay away from mold. That's not a feeling, right?
Mold, right?
When there's mold, do this.
Yeah, right. So it's not like just like have a nice spirituality. It's actually doing things in order to show yourself set apart.
So it's a very, I think, robust view of faith. You might, if you're talking about what is faith in this section of Peter, well, it is believing what you don't see. There's this mental assent, this leap you have to take, and it is a different mindset that leads to action, and it spells out in what you do with your body. So, some people have talked about faith in terms of, head, hands, and heart. Like, it's all working together in this full faith, which is, the basis of the salvation of our souls.
I agree.
Well, looks like we are
we're at the end of our time.
at time and end of a decent section-ish part. We only got a couple more verses. That's okay. We may or may not speed up. That's how it goes. But until then, thanks for joining us this episode of the After Class podcast. After Class because
The best conversations happen
After class.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the After Class podcast. ACP is hosted by Sam Long, John Nugent, and Ron Peters. Social media pictures and descriptions are provided by Darren Harris. Audio mixing and editing is done by Drew Nyquist. If you've enjoyed this episode of ACP, you might also enjoy GLCC's Master of Arts in Practical Theology degree. In this 36-hour program, you will receive first-rate biblical and theological instruction from John, Ron, Sam, and several of their colleagues at Great Lakes Christian College. To learn more about this program, visit glcc.edu. Get practical and go deep at GLCC.